a couple weeks ago, I read part of a speech from Vladimir Putin to you guys, and if you were watching, great. If you weren't, we're going to revisit a little bit of it. But it's very interesting. Vladimir Putin, when speaking to his people, sounds like an arch conservative, at least a social conservative. Now, he's completely, I mean, I don't think you guys disagree, he's completely authoritarian.
Yes,
of course.
I mean, he wants control, and it's a democracy in name only. But what's interesting is he has realized that communism so ravaged the country that they lost fundamental values. The backbone of their culture was essentially excised. So I want to read, and my point here is that I think Putin has actually realized some things that Americans fundamentally have got to realize. And Putin's realized them because they've lived through the godlessness America is now flirting with.
Yeah, and Josh, as you read this, I can't help wonder as I read it, and Grant, we were talking about this before, is this truly Putin in his clear, transparent self, or is he sort of using language of history, of religiosity, of family to make a case and to create America as a foil, as the degenerate to Russia's supremacy kind of thing? So go ahead.
We are good at being the great Satan.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And go ahead.
And I was going to say, and as you read through this, you're kind of going, oh, that's sort of true, and that's sort of right, and so he's making observations of a part of American society, of Western civilization, that are really true.
Yeah.
And I hope we would take heart at it. But you wonder, obviously, through who this man is, he's using it for his own purposes.
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I think this has the virtue of what Putin is saying has the virtue of casting America in a negative light and as the alternative to Russia, as the inferior alternative to Russia. But it also, I think Putin is desperately trying to figure out to give his people some kind of a foundation to stand on, because if you don't have God and culture and country, which you did not have under the Soviet Union, you didn't even have country, you just had the state, you had government, then they fall into an abyss. So I'm going to read you a couple of excerpts here and we'll discuss. This is Vladimir Putin speaking back in October of last year. Some people in the West believe that an aggressive elimination of entire pages from their own history, reverse discrimination against the majority in the interest of a minority, and the demand to give up the traditional notions of mother, father, family, and even gender, they believe that all these are the mileposts on the path toward social renewal. We believe, speaking about Russia, we believe that we must rely on our own spiritual values, our historical traditions, and the culture of our multi-ethnic nation. None of those things are, all of those things are anathema to communism, by the way. Their culture, historical tradition, and spiritual values.
Yeah, and in just 2 generations in Russia, now they're moving away from the state is the God to now, we've always recognized God. And as you read a little further, he's going to even resort to his own history and how they got it wrong and how they're now enlightened as a result of their own history, right?
So, exactly. You're a prophet, my friend. Exactly right.
That's why they call me Paul.
Again, Putin speaking. Their prescriptions are not new. Talking about the woke left in America. Their prescriptions are not new. Russia has been there already. After the 1917 revolution, the Bolsheviks, relying on the dogmas of Marx and Engels, also said that they would change existing ways and customs, and not just political and economic ones, but the very notion of human morality and the foundations of a healthy society, the destruction of age-old values, religion, and relations between people, up to and including the total rejection of family. We had that too. Does that not sound like the modern American left, Grant?
It does. I mean, that's what he's describing. I think, like you said, I have to take this with a bit of a grain of salt because this is coming from Vladimir Putin, a guy who we know is authoritarian and does believe that his nation should be raised above America.
Yeah.
But what he's saying, the actual facts of his speech are correct. I agree with them. I think he's making good points. And I think it's also kind of shows that the left in America has said that we're not allowed to agree with anything that Putin says because he's a terrible person, blah, 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 blah. He does bad things. I'm not saying that he's a good person. I don't think he's at the level where we're not able to say he does some things that we also agree with. Like, I can say that he's a bad person and he treats citizens of Ukraine poorly, and that he does all these things, but also that he is a smart leader and that he makes good points in this speech. I mean, I think both those things can be true.
I think he's as savvy as they can be, Grant. I think you're right in that sense, and he's trying to articulate a new future, and he's using this speech of hearkening back to family and gender roles and traditionalism and religion as those building blocks to this new future that he's proclaiming. But he's still picking at the Western elitism, wokeism as the true bad guy. So he's still pitting a Mother Russia against all these bad elites over here.
Well, I want to read just a couple more lines, and then we'll throw it just completely to Worldview here. Again, this is Vladimir Putin speaking back in October. Sorry. There it is. In a number of Western countries, the debate over men's and women's rights has turned into a perfect phantasmagoria. Look, beware of going where the Bolsheviks once planned to go. Not only communalizing chickens, but also communalizing women. One more step, and you'll be there. Not to mention some truly monstrous things when children are taught from an early age that a boy can easily become a girl and vice versa. Well, if someone likes this, let them do it. I've already mentioned that in shaping our approaches, we'll be guided by a healthy conservatism. Now, when the world is going through a structural disruption, the importance of reasonable conservatism as the foundation for a political course has skyrocketed precisely because of the multiplying risks and dangers and the fragility of the reality around us. Paul, this sounds like it was written by Dostoevsky.
Yeah, certainly does, or Reagan, or back in.
He's absolutely acknowledging that without bedrock principles,
right,
of a religious faith, family, without those values, society crumbles. And he's saying we've been there. The Bolsheviks did this to us.
Exactly. So so he's harkening back to his own history and learning from his history. And now he's communicating that broadly to his own people. But it gets back to that sphere sovereignty that Kuiper talked about. Family and church and state, and they all have their roles in a sense. And he's saying that we have learned, and again, Hollywood has put out this propaganda, the woke elite has put out this propaganda, that those are all blended. We don't need all those things, and all traditionalism and conservatism is just a crumbling mess. Yeah. So that's, again, I joked offline with you guys that I said, boy, if this guy ran for president, I'd have a hard time not voting for him here with that speech. Now, of course, we know the fruit that comes out of what he does is a little different than the rhetoric.